Hi, I'm Chef Chinu Vaze, and I'm a chef, I'm a TV show host, I'm a content creator, I'm a cookbook author, and I'm a mum.
Hi, I'm Chef Guntas Sethi. I'm a patisserie chef, an ex-chartered accountant, and I live, breathe food.
Dun dun dun.
Okay, chef,
Yes.
I have questions for you. What was one of the first dishes you remember making?
So I remember making this Mari biscuit base and cutting apples on top and putting some sugar and putting it, I think, in the microwave.
So
I don't
it
know.
caramelizes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
yum.
this was like this 2-minute apple pie, and I was very proud of it. And
You
I
should
wanted
do it
to...
now. It'll go viral.
Oh yeah, of course.
The algorithm would love it.
All about the algorithm.
But that sounds yum.
What did you make first ever?
I'm a Punjabi and gajar ka halwa.
Yum.
But my dad taught me this way where you would actually chop it all up, like the carrots, and then put it all together. Like heat some ghee, put some sugar, like get the color in, put the carrots in and grate some orange zest.
Oh my God, how fancy.
Yeah, and then put milk and then actually just give it a seety in the cooker. And so it would just come together with very little effort. And once it's done, you just mash it up.
Oh, yum.
And it was easier and quicker, and I still make it till date.
I love the orange zest edition.
You know what? It adds
That's
like a
very,
beautiful flavor and this whole floral note, like that citrusy note to it, which comes together really well.
Kind of elevates the...
And also the color.
Guntas.
Hanji.
Growing up, was food a really important part of your childhood, or was it something that you realized you were interested in later on in your life as a profession?
So I grew up in Guwahati, but I'm
Yeah.
a Sardarni.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't have access to fancy restaurants or cuisines.
Right.
And my parents, for us, all celebrations and everything revolved around food. My dad would actually look at food very differently and teach us the science behind it. That, if you're making something, it needs to have salt, spice, sourness. For example, if you want to add the sourness quotient, you can use nimbu, like lemon, or you use chaat masala, or use amchur, or you use dahi or tomato. You don't want to use everything. So food was kind of our bonding activity, and it was also looked at from a manner of education and
Right.
not just something that you do to eat. We had like a little bit of a tiny mini farm where we could get like fresh veggies.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So like winters, for example, it's cold, so you light a fire, right? And then we would take our sweet potatoes, brinjal, and just put it inside and leave it. And the next day it's all like, cooked and mushy, and then you make a bharta out of it. I was an introvert. I still am to an extent. So whenever people would come over, I wanted to be in the kitchen because I didn't want to go out and cook. And I wanted to do something with food. But back in the day, it wasn't a lucrative option.
Yeah.
So I decided to do CA, and I still remember I was obsessed with MasterChef Australia. I think a lot of us are. And during my CA finals, I was seeing it, and my parents were really worried. They were like, what on this planet is this woman doing? As soon as I finished my CA, I was like, Dad, I really want to pursue this. And they were very supportive. They were like, now you have your degree, do whatever you want to do. So growing up, it has always been food.
What I love about this is that you learned how to cook from your dad, because all of us have stories about like our mums and grandmoms, and that gender role being kind of, especially for that generation, being inverted is really great.
In our family, like the entire family, not just like my parents, they've always looked at food as a life skill, and they've not like looked at it as something which is gender based. I've studied abroad, and thankfully that I knew all of this. It was so much more easier.
I didn't get into the kitchen at all when I was growing up, but I ate a lot. And in my family, actually, it was definitely a very, in terms of like a matriarchal food-centric family, because there was my grandmother and there were my aunts and my mum. They're 3 sisters, and they're very into like seafood and also very like gourmet and well-traveled and very like making like mayo at home when I was like young, and like, mustard and things like that. But also like we used to have these crab lunches where everyone would just sit.
That's very interesting.
And just sit and eat crabs, and like the shells of crabs would just kind of like, I had a very bad reputation when I was younger about, being very small but eating a lot.
That sounds really fancy and in complete contrast to what we would do, because we were in the Northeast. So my Tayajis and all also wonderful cooks. So we would all actually go to the tea gardens or to select a place which is on the riverside,
Oh,
and actually, light out, like take the wood, light on fire. Like we used to take all those bartans and go and cook there. And it used to be the men for cooking and the women just
this is like the kind
in
of
the sun,
slow life why I have moved to Goa to give my kid this life. Because honestly, growing up in Bombay, you don't have to learn how to do anything, right? You don't even need to know how to put a nail into the wall or cook anything, because there's always... It's so easy to access things. Coming from the city, that's how it always was. And actually, I feel the women were always a lot more liberated in terms of like they didn't have to be in the kitchen. So a lot of like even my mom's generation and even my generation didn't learn how to cook because it was kind of like a feminist rebellion that why should I make a chapati, you know? Like.
But I think that's where it's important to understand that it's a life skill. You need to know how to make your bed. You need to know how to cook. You need to know
grow
how
your own
to
vegetables.
You need to know basic banking stuff. You need to know taxes, and these are very important. And I really wish we learned this.
You know, now if someone like a lot of people are like, should I go to culinary school because I went to Cordon Bleu Paris and like, you know, which one is good? I'm like, please go to your...
Cordon Bleu London.
Oh yeah. And I'm like, please go to your MBA if you want to run your own business, because the first thing you need to do is your business making money, not what you want to cook.
Listen, to learn how to monetize it also eventually is extremely important. We have bills to pay.
Yeah, for any profession, I think to learn how to understand whether it's actually making you money or not. Of course, you need a skill. You need to get professionally trained.
Skills are so important, right? Like there are these videos that go viral and people who go viral where you are relevant just for a little bit and then the relevance goes away.
Yeah.
And it's difficult then because you're used to a certain type of attention in life and then you realize that there is no skill. So I do feel that it's so important to work on a skill because your relevance on the social media, for example, can be temporary, but your skill is something no one can take away from you,
I mean,
right?
I wake up thinking that being on social media and using that as like your work, I have no idea why some of my videos do well and some don't. Like
we will never know.
That is at least one thing. If you have a skill and you have a product in like the real world, non-digital world, I'm saying. I mean, if I make some food and you'll only buy it if you like it, and that's how I do well, it's like a very logical kind of, you have something that people like, they'll pay you for it, and that's how you do well. I think on social media, it's so like hit and miss, and so like, sometimes even I have no idea why did this do so well and this not.
Yeah, you don't understand it. You might create something, a piece of content which is a part of your heart. You put all your effort, love, thinking, like you've analyzed it, you've done everything, and then it doesn't pick up. And then something like, for example, recently there was a 1 second trend, which is that you do a 1 second reel and it's gonna go viral. So the algorithm's gonna think it's gonna trend, and then you're just like, I'm creating content here for a recipe which has taken me 3 hours to make.
I know,
and then
right?
a 1 second clip is the one going viral. So it's crazy.
But none of my videos that have gone viral have anything to do with my recipes. They mostly have to do with me eating crab claws, connecting the dots to my childhood. Or, I don't know, I was like in the mountains and my kids and her friend, like my kid and her friends, and we made some plum jam. And
I remember that. But see, that was beautiful. That was something which was creating an emotion.
What is your video that, the most viral video that you've had?
Amritsari paneer bhurji. Yeah. Like of all the recipes, Amritsari
and
paneer
considering
bhurji.
you're known for like your like fusion and Western food and all that.
I was just like, I feel the reason that did well is just because of the access to ingredients and the time.
Yeah.
So it did connect with a lot of people like, hey, 15 minutes, I have everything at home. I can whip up something which is fancy.
Yeah.
And it connects. Wow, what is the most overused tool in your kitchen?
I think my mixer grinder, which
has replaced the model pestle.
Yeah, although I have to say that I am now in this like very retro mood of like trying to find like old kitchen equipment that I saw my grandmom and, not even my mom. My mom started cooking much later in life. So I bought a pata varvanta.
Yeah, we call it silvatta.
Yeah. So I bought that. Of course, I still use my mixer most of the time.
But I feel when you make your chutney...
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's very different.
And the texture is very different. And I also recently bought a ravi. Do you know what a ravi is? What you make buttermilk from?
Ghutni we call it.
Yeah, so that... And I'm getting into these kind of like reclaiming some of these things, but of course only when I have time to sit and like,
But
do
it's
something.
it's purely love, right?
Yeah.
Like, so because we grew up in Assam, we used to have a lot of mustard.
Yeah.
And when you soak it, and it has to be soaked for the right time,
Yeah.
so that it's not bitter
So it's
enough.
not bitter, yeah.
And then when you make
And then
like
you
that,
grind it, and then that pungency just kind
yeah,
of.
that just with like dal, chawal, and lebu, like the gondoraj.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it is
Gondoraj
so
such a
good.
great
Yeah,
event.
it is so good.
What is your most used kitchen equipment?
The obvious answer would be chef's knife, but I'm getting lazy. And I think the chopper, that drawstring chopper, it's just made life so much more easier. Like,
Yeah.
put all the garlic, put it,
Yeah,
like,
especially for garlic.
put it
yeah.
out, like, literally I put them, portion it out into ice cube trays and then put it in the freezer and take it off and
what a
use
great
it whenever
hack.
you want.
Yeah.
But, I want to come back to what you said, like these old, so back home, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but my dad used to do it. Like, I've seen my family do it. You know mukka pyaz?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, the door, they would like peel the onion and actually not even peel it completely, put it between the door. Like,
Shut the door.
shut the door, and then when you open it, it's kind of like disintegrated, and we have it.
I hope you cleaned your doors
Yeah,
well.
yeah. But it's such
like a bit of dog grease with your pyaz.
Yeah, no.
This reminds me of my dad used to make Bloody Marys on like Sundays, and then he, before ice crushers and all, he used to put it in a napkin, and he used to then start pounding the ice on the floor.
But all of this, it's like all of these memories are so beautiful, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think connecting the dots for your children and like having them experience you actually making stuff. Like, I mean, my daughter is now such a snob because, of course, like 2 chefs as parents. So like we have this amazing pizza oven, and now Chris only makes pizza at home. So anytime she goes out, she's like, my papa's pizza is better. And then every time she goes out, she's like, is it Swiss cheese? Because he's from Switzerland and we only get cheese from his village.
Imagine the amount of information also that they have, right? It's just the access to it, right? You can see the you can get access to the information whenever you want.
But that's same with recipes, and earlier recipes were such closely guarded, kind of like either family secrets or professional chefs and techniques, and like how to make like say a
Now it's
hollandaise
become
or
like,
whatever.
listen, please give me your secret so I can post it can go viral.
Yeah, so now there's nothing like your recipe or like an original recipe or like the most authentic recipe.
We see it most when there's seasonal produce, like mangoes, everyone's doing mango, lychee, everyone's, and after a point you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like how
and
much?
then, especially if you're at it for a while, like how we have been, I'm like, oh, done this, been there, done that. The thing is that I think maybe because I live in Goa, I'm a little slow, so I'm not consuming other people's content. So every time I put up something, someone else has just like
And that's
2-3 weeks
problem.
before done it.
But that's another problem, because literally not only do you need to be attentive about what you are posting, but you also need to always be like what someone else is posting.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be accused or called out for like copying or being inspired. If you're inspired,
Or
you need to give credit.
Not get engagement because the other person has already gone like say viral with it. What culinary skill do you think is the most important to master as a chef?
I feel to be able to understand heat and temperature.
Yeah.
So whether you're in patisserie or you are in culinary, there's so many times you might put the oven to 180 degrees, but it may not be at that. It may not be working well. So just to be able to put your hand in and to get to understand the heat. And where I actually learned this is while making rotis in the Gurdwara. So for us, every Sunday we used to go to the Gurdwara.
Yeah.
And we used to actually... Mom, Dad, and my sister would actually make the parshade, the rotis, and Dad would cook it. And it's just not us. It used to be like 30, 40 people, right? And you need to be able to understand when to flip it over, when have the edges kind of...
Chapati making is like a rocket science.
And
I still haven't cracked it.
like there's a huge tawa.
Right.
Like it's huge. Just to be able to put your hand on top and understand, is it ready enough for me to put it in right now?
Right.
At what time do you flip it so that it perfectly fluffs up? And for that temperature understanding, I think becomes very important.
So I think one of the things that people need to master, which actually I still feel I don't have, is patience.
That's life. That's
While
life.
cooking, because
Oh,
Especially,
yeah, I know.
women think that they have to multitask all the time. So I'm trying
don't
to
know any other way.
Yeah, I'm trying to like cook something and then like organize something in my house and sort out my kids something and like check what's happening on my Instagram. And when you're cooking something, just do that. So you'll be able to keep track of the heat.
Yeah.
You'll be able to see the changes that, when you need to flip things over, like when even your Maed reaction is happening, when something is really browning, and not like prodding and pushing it all the time, but letting it be. And then turning it or taking it out of the oven when it's really ready and not rushing it.
Slow cooking, the flavor it brings
Yeah.
is beautiful. But we live in a world of 5-minute recipes, 15-minute recipes.
Yes.
Right?
At least online.
Yeah.
However long it might actually take you to make the recipe, it has to show that it's a 5-minute recipe.
Yeah. So I completely, totally understand what you're saying. And there are times where you're rushing it and then you can even see it. It's not caramelizing the way you'd like it to, but because you're really rushing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, patience is so important.
What I'm learning now is like, I know that if I overstack my day, I'll end up cancelling 5 things out of it anyway.
I'm getting an anxiety attack.
Yeah,
I'll get one.
yeah. No, now it's just like this whole culture of doing everything really fast, staying on top of trends.
And not saying no to anything.
Not saying no. See, being successful women, it does get hard to turn down money, good opportunities. It's quite complimentary when people want you. And then you say yes to everything and
And
then
it
you
comes from
die.
a place of gratitude also, right?
Yeah,
if
like,
someone's
how
reaching
nice.
out,
Yeah,
how can I
exactly.
say no?
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions people have about the work you do?
I feel there are like different generations you speak to. Let's say my parents' generation has no idea, firstly, that you can monetize social media.
Yeah.
So they think that all this stuff I'm doing, I'm just doing from the kindness of my
Pro bono,
heart
like you're
because
just
I want to
doing-
share
yeah.
recipes and I want to become an influencer or something. I have to break it to them that I have no ambition just to be an influencer without making money off it. And I wouldn't put out these many recipes if it wasn't my work.
Exactly.
First misconception is that being on social media is just some kind of hobby and it's not my work. Because I work really hard at it. And it's a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday.
It's not 9 to 5. There's no timing to it. You're working all the time.
Working all the time. No, I have now put timings where
Which
if
is
people
great.
on my great WhatsApp groups message me after like 5 o'clock, I'm just like, message me tomorrow.
Okay.
Clear. Although I have to say it's really hard work. And when I could go from being in a kitchen like 18 hours a day to making content, for me, it was like, wow, this is amazing. I mean,
What do you find like really different from like being in the kitchen physically serving out food, because you also run a catering company, and putting out recipes? Like, how does your mind work? Like, how do you look at it differently?
it's actually the glam side of being a chef and being in a professional kitchen with pretty bad ventilation, very small spaces which are very hot. It's actually more like a construction worker than like some fancy Michelin chef, Especially in India, because we don't have big spaces, we don't have beautiful kitchens, and we're not like cooking with only people who went to
not the
fancy
best
culinary schools.
equipment. Yeah.
Then when I got into content creation, it was very much on my own terms. Actually, I always talk about like Instagram and like content when it started, remember statics?
Doing great. Yeah, you take a picture of a final dish and
Right. And it was a very like charmed, there was a lot of like interaction between brands and creators and a lot of like synergy happening.
But did you like plan to get into this?
No, there was the pandemic and the lockdown and my catering company shut down. And Chris and me worked together. So we were a single income family with a 2-year-old and with 20 kitchen staff who we really wanted to keep paying.
Yeah.
Because it was really hard. We were doing like 2 people caterings. And our usual minimum is like 15 people.
Right.
And that
But
was
that's
in fact...
great, right? Like it started out of desperate times, if I can say.
Yeah.
And then you kind of now are
mean,
acing it, and how?
It was the biggest present to be given to me that I could sit at home with my baby and get paid for doing like pohe recipes, which I was coming from this very like gourmet, only making like, really fancy
But chef,
food.
tell me one thing, like when you're thinking of a recipe that you want to serve as a part of your catering company, and then a recipe that you're creating for the audience, how are you thinking differently? How are you like, because
there are
for
different
me, like
personas.
Exactly, that's what I want to understand. Because the way, so I had a patisserie, right? And I also work with the European Union.
Right.
Now, when I create a recipe that I want to serve, it's totally different from what I'm creating for the audience, because there I'm cooking, and here I am showing you how to cook, but you are going to be able to make it.
Yes.
Right? So
also
even
the kind of audience, look, once you cross a certain number of followers, let's say, like when I had fewer followers, it was much more niche. I could actually be in a way much more authentic and say whatever I wanted.
Even with ingredients, you didn't have to think about the availability, right?
Yeah, availability. Also, like, I remember when I started making Maharashtrian recipes after like initially being in this like, I went to Paris to study kind of zone. And suddenly my numbers increased like crazy. And like, I realized that even if I said one word in Marathi, everybody was like, wow, like, and in a way,
I think the community also found that, right? Like for your community in that manner. Yeah. There was so much relatability, right? There's someone from our community who's out there. You kind of feel stronger.
I mean, it's kind of like your dopamine hit, right? You're like, okay, you find something that is doing well. You kind of are like, okay, I'll maybe keep doing that. But now I kind of pulled back from that a little bit, because I realized that the followers that I'm interested in attracting, if I only do one kind of style of cooking, which is not even like really inherent to what I like to eat or make, it's not that authentic. So now I'm trying to kind of take these ingredients like a chauli or a matki, or like trying to find these seasonal things that people like. There's this gourd called dodka, and you can make a chutney out of its peels. So I made which is kind of like a Loki.
Yeah. Understood. Yeah.
So I made a guacamole, which was like making a kind of fake avocado replacement. Because again, avocados are expensive and they're so elusive. They're like unicorns to find a good avocado.
Yeah. And a ripe one.
Yeah, so
you want to have it.
Or ripe is just like praying to the avocado. Like, algorithm and avocado should be like on the altar. But yeah, I mean, once you taste big engagement and then kind of coming back to yourself, I think is the key. Even if you do lose out on...
I think it's community building and less about the number.
Yeah.
That's when the right people, the right brands come to you. At the end of the day, at least the way I look at it is that if you're taking out the time, if you're taking out the money to buy the ingredients, if you're making it, it's making someone happy, I'm grateful for you. Really grateful you took out the time, you took out the money, and you're happy.
And
I'm trying to educate you.
What you're doing there is
what we're trying to do is actually be able to provide education, right? Yeah. The way I look at it is that I am just a digital recipe book. Along with the recipe, I'm also giving you like a 50-second on how to make it.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to make an impact. I know it's a successful day for me when I get pictures of people making it.
Coming to what is the misconception that people have about what you do?
That it's easy. No, it's not. To think about a creative recipe or something new every day is definitely not easy. No. And the second is this whole debate about real chef and real chef. I think we all choose different paths based on opportunities. Yeah. When I started off, I had a patisserie. Yeah. The lockdown happened, didn't have anything to kind of do, so started just putting out pictures. This became a lucrative opportunity and you take it up.
So,
right?
I think that a lot of content creators got born out of the pandemic.
Exactly. But then there are people out there who are extremely skilled, but maybe do find it difficult on social media to be able to kind of, really put it out there. Yeah. Again, the food that you make is one thing. To package it and to be able to provide the right hook and to get the attention is another thing.
Of course.
Right? So there are two aspects to what we do. Sure. That's the reason there's social media managers. That's the reason there are content strategists, because it's a whole different vertical.
Yeah, and if you cracked it on your own without any strategists, that means
we all need help.
You have it in your brain.
That's again another thing. You study, you read, you analyze so much about it, right? You're reading trends. So that misconception a lot of times where there are real chefs, since that's what they like to call themselves, we'll call you that, where they kind of think that it's okay to like throw shade just because you don't have something on the side which is selling the product that you're making.
Right.
I feel that just not too pleasant. And also, like, a lot of people think, wow, you do recipes, how do you make money? I do recipes because I make money. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
If there is one thing you could change about your industry, what would it be and why?
I would really like people to start using more seasonal produce. I think we're so influenced by different cuisines because now we have access to it that we're always looking to perfect those recipes. So we want to get so many imported produce, which is great. There's a lot that you don't readily get available.
Yeah.
So you use that, which is fine. But just this need to always use produce which is not seasonal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for example, you said you don't have an avocado, you use a different vegetable and kind of do. There's so much that can be done. And also sustainability, something I think we all should work on.
Yeah.
For example, we throw away the potato peels. You can actually make beautiful crisps out of it.
Yeah.
So sustainability and using more seasonal produce 100% is things I feel like not just in the industry, but also at home is things we should definitely start practicing.
I feel actually in the food industry, what really needs to change is, I've had very few women in my kitchen also because there is a certain, I was the boss, so I could, and I also waited to have my kid post 35 because I was like, I'm in the kitchen 18 hours a day. When am I going to have a baby?
Yeah.
What I really feel that maternity leave and hours around how chefs who are also mothers can continue working, because what happens is they keep working and then the minute you have a kid, working in the kitchen just becomes so unsustainable and impossible that they just stop working in the kitchen, or they take different kinds of jobs. And I also
because
feel
it's also very physically exhausting.
It's physically exhausting. The hours are crazy. I feel it happens to women actually everywhere, where there's just like kind of a falling off the radar because you don't want to work so hard. You want to be with your kid. And I think that
you need
really,
energy with your child.
Yeah. You don't want to come home and just like collapse. So
which does happen to me still.
Yeah, which I was like, I replaced being in the kitchen by this different animal. But yeah, that would be something I would really change for sure.
But it was lovely talking to you, Chef.
You too,
And we should talk more even when the cameras are off.
Yes.
And more controversial stuff.